The views expressed on this program are those of the producers and individuals appearing on this program and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Sun Prairie Media Center staff, its video service providers, or the staff and elected officials of the City of Sun Prairie.
Welcome to Moments of Strength. I'm your host, Mary Kaufman. In this show, we celebrate the incredible resilience of mothers, showing up through life's challenges, growing through every triumph, and carving out space for their own passions and identity. We're here to uplift and reassure every mom that you are not alone and that asking for help is a powerful strength. Each episode brings a story of motherhood's beautiful chaos. I'm happy you can join us for today's inspiring journey. And today's guest is Annette. Annette, thank you for coming.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes, so you and I have sort of recently struck up this friendship, which has been so great.
I know.
And so I'm happy you're here to share your story with
Thank
everybody.
you.
And it really is kind of a roller coaster of a story. So everyone should get ready for that.
Yeah. Buckle up.
Yes, that's right. Okay, so we have an hour or a little more. And so what I'd like to do is just talk a little bit about how you grew up and then your journey into motherhood.
Okay.
And I know it is jam-packed.
Yeah.
So we'll try to be cognizant of the time, but there's a lot of good stuff in there. And so let's start, and maybe you can just start with, where you grew up, how you came into the world, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. So I grew up in East Troy, a small town, probably about an hour from here. I'm the youngest of 8.
Yes.
I have 6 older brothers and an older sister. And I'm the youngest of the large group of 8. My oldest brother is 20 years older than me. And the sibling that is closest in age to me is 9 years. Okay. So, I mean, I guess you could say I, at times, felt like an only child because a lot of my older siblings were moved out.
Sure.
And my sister, my only sister, she's 19 years older than me.
Wow.
So I hung out with my 2 younger brothers at the time of growing up. But mainly, I have a lot of memories with my parents because everybody was kind of doing their own thing.
Well, by the time you were out of single digits, everybody would have been kind of going off to do their own thing. So that really is, it really is like a
There's a picture of me, my dad is holding me at one of my brother's weddings. And it's so funny because, I'm just this little baby. And here is a brother getting married. And then I remember I was the flower girl in one of my brother's weddings. So, and then finally at the last brother who got married, I was a bridesmaid. So I was starting to mature and become different in each wedding.
You grew into that. Stages. That's great. But kind of hard to imagine too sometimes, like 20 years of existence for your oldest sibling before you even arrived is kind of wild.
It is wild. And now we'll touch base on my family, my kids, but my kids now, there is a huge span too. So it's like I can identify with the youngest and the oldest. But my oldest was out of the house too when the youngest was coming into the house. So a lot of similarities, but my childhood was really, I look back on it with so many fond memories.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, because living in the small town, it was very safe. Back then. There were no phones, no cell phones. So I played with my best friends down the street. We'd lug our Barbies down the street to each other's house, set up Barbies for the day, and it was just, then we'd get bored, hop on our bikes, go to the candy shop, grab candy. Really just wonderful memories.
There's a lot of freedom to explore back then. I mean, we're similar age, so I remember those days too.
Just, making forts in the backyard, magic shows with the clothesline.
Yeah, climbing trees.
Yeah. And so I think I was pretty creative as a child too. I think because, I didn't have some siblings to play with all the time.
Sure.
I became my best friend sometimes, and so I had a really good imagination.
Yeah.
And so with my kids now, it's like I try to teach them some of the things that I used to do, and it's pretty cool. Like, what, Mom?
It's kind of novel because people aren't doing those things. So
no, so it's kind of fun.
That's great.
In a clothesline, my kids are like, a clothesline?
Right.
What's that all about, Mom?
Yeah, you don't see a lot of those anymore.
No.
Okay, so any sports or what did you do extracurricularly?
So I was not super sporty.
Sure.
But I was social enough to keep me like in the loop with what was going on. My basketball coach kind of laughed at me. Like sometimes I would purposely, for away games, I would purposely bring the wrong jersey so I wouldn't have to play. And my parents were so good, so supportive. They would come to all of the games, not the away games, but all of the home games. And I just remember it being parents' night. And my dad was sitting at the top of the bleachers, always came, and I'm always on the bench, and I'd wave to him from the bench. And all of a sudden he yells, "Put Price in." My maiden name is Price. And I was like, oh gosh, no. And the coach literally said, "Annette, I gotta put you in. Your parents come." And I said, okay, oh gosh. So he put me in, and I was just so nervous that it's natural. I was like, well, if I'm gonna be here, throw me the ball. Throw me the ball. And he threw it, and I was like, oh gosh. And I made the basket, and I was so excited. And then I see everybody go like this. It was for the other team.
Oops.
But it was so good because we were losing by a lot, and then it was halftime. We all run downstairs, and they're like, "Annette, you made a basket."
Yeah, no one even cared at that point. Yeah,
no,
good for you.
that was my claim to fame.
Yeah.
So sports, I did pom-poms. I went to a small school, private school. So you always made whatever team you were trying out for. One of my best friends, we tried out for, we were going to, when we realized, wait, volleyball? Wait, this is like a really serious sport for our high school. So we looked at each other and we just said, nah.
Yeah.
We said, we'll pick you up after practice, you guys. So
know thyself.
know your strengths.
That's right.
And talking was probably one of my strengths, but movement wasn't huge.
Yeah.
So,
which is important to note for later in life.
Yes.
Because you found that.
Yeah.
So, okay, so graduate high school and then off to college.
Off to college. I went to Whitewater.
Okay.
And because that was the place to go if you wanted to have a teaching degree or business, I just never thought of any other place. I think because my sister-in-law went there, my mom was a teacher, and it fit me very well. It's a smaller school. And then while I was there, literally like the second week into college, I met my husband now.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And that was a wild ride. You know, I looked at him at the time, and my roommate and I are going around the room, like kind of grading the boys, up, down, thumbs. And I got to him, and I just remember going, he's like a half up, half down, because he had this crazy haircut. But it was his humor that got me. And his straight teeth. I liked his straight teeth. So we hit it off, and here we are, 28 years later.
Yes, it's been a long journey.
Yeah.
So that was early on, and so just you finished your degree.
Finished my degree, and then again when I was dating him, cute town. He grew up in Wanakee.
Okay. Yes.
And so I thought, okay, well, I never saw myself living in East Troy, which is crazy because I was such a small town girl.
Sure.
But I don't know why. There was just something that I just thought, oh, you move on and you go to a different place in life. And then his was my landing pad. I was like, oh, I like this town.
Yeah.
And this
is a very cute town.
It is.
Yeah.
And he was born and raised there. And so I immediately got a job in Wanakee, started teaching. I didn't teach very long, and then I was pregnant with my first child.
What grades were you teaching?
Kindergarten. I started in first grade.
Okay.
And then taught that grade. I loved that grade. That was the grade I always wanted to teach. And then after I had Hattie and Charlie, my two oldest,
Sure.
I went back to the same school and I taught kindergarten. And then I loved that.
Yeah.
And wonderful grades.
There's something about all that, like hope and potential, curiosity,
Innocence.
yeah, sense of adventure, just, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's fun to be in a room like that. I really think, you know, when I've done book readings for my books, and I usually read to, I don't know, 4K to like second grade. And older grades I just do activities with, but yeah, just looking at their little faces and everything is just still so new, and you know, they don't know the system well enough to sort of start really manipulating it, because we all do that. But yeah, just all that hope and fun. So those are great. I can see why you did that. Yeah.
Well, and when we would have story time, I loved story time, like you're saying, reading to the kids. And they would come in from recess, and I had just started this. All of a sudden, it was one day I didn't have a book out, but I knew that we were going to, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to tell you guys a made-up story. And then that became like, oh, would you do that again? And I didn't plan for it, but it was that imagination that, and then of course, you know, they could identify, maybe I would kind of put them in the stories a little bit. So then I started doing that with my kids at bedtime, and it just, it stuck. Yeah.
That's very funny, because I also did that with my kids. I mean, obviously I didn't have a class, but I feel like I read every, you know, children's book in the library, because I read to my kids every night.
Yep.
And so we would come here and to the public library and just check out. You can check out, for anybody who doesn't know, 100 books at a time. And so we would get those like recyclable grocery bags and just be dragging them out of here, you know. And I just felt like I had read all the books, and so sometimes it was just fun to make it up. And if you have an imagination that is sort of wild and untamed, it's not that hard.
No.
Yeah, and it's very fun.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that fit my personality, because I am all over the board sometimes, and the stories can just take you anywhere.
Yeah. Are you a person who like can go off on a tangent? Like just and imagine, like, what if they this or that? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Me too.
Yes. Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you have your first two kids, and then you decide to stay home.
I decided to stay home. My dad, oddly, was a mechanical engineer, and so he traveled a lot, and he would come home on the boat, and I never remembered it, but there would be this long pier, and I would, I guess, walk out to the end of the pier, and here comes my dad. My older siblings remember him being gone quite often.
Oh, sure.
And so then he got hurt on the job, and he lost part of his short-term memory. Yeah, and I mean, I look at my parents and I say, wow, they went through so much as a married couple. Like, my dad was frying bacon, and he walked outside, then he went to the coffee shop. He didn't realize that he was frying bacon.
Oh, it was happening still, yes.
And he burned, the kitchen burned. And so then our whole family had to go live in a motel for about 3 or 4 months. And I remember swimming a lot, but I don't remember like big parts of that. So then my dad ended up being retiring early, maybe at 50. They had me when they were 45. So that was, you know, I had older parents. And so I had the luxury of having a stay-at-home dad.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it was peanut butter jelly sandwich, 2 windmill cookies, and a banana in my paper bag.
Yeah.
And I would always trade my banana for somebody else's thing. But I really loved having that stay-at-home dad. I deviated because you asked me a question, and it took me back to that. I don't know, but
we can just go from there.
Yeah.
That's a great memory. My youngest sister had that kind of time with my dad. I was one of the older ones, so you were the baby, and I was older, so a different perspective on that. But she had some very like kind of special time with him that we never would have known.
Yeah.
Of course, our time was different and special, you know. But he was working, so there's just that one-on-one, I don't know, have a conversation, and there's not the pressure to get to work and
Yes.
all of that. So.
I mean, I know how special that was for me, and I never took it for granted. I mean, fast forward to when my parents were older, both of them, I had the honor and privilege of having them move into our house.
Yeah, that's great.
And so it was full circle, you know, they took care of me, and then I was able to take care of them along with the rest of my family. They would come and visit, but having that day to day with my parents was really beautiful.
Makes life kind of whole.
It really does.
What we were talking about was after you had your first 2 kids,
Oh, yeah.
and then stay home
Yeah.
after that. Yeah.
And how was it staying home with them? Is that, staying home, I'd always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, always. And so I did all the simple things. The garbage truck would come Monday morning, and Charlie would look out the window and watch. That was a big deal. We would go walk to the video library down the street, rent movies. I look at that time and I say it was so beautiful because it's, now I'm out of it by so many years.
Yeah.
But it was so hard.
Yes.
I wanted to have a big family, and I think I talked about having maybe 5 kids in the beginning. I'll be honest, when I had Hattie and Charlie so close together, 15 months apart, I thought, how do people do it? And they act like they're so happy doing it.
Yeah.
I honestly was like, I'm counting down to nap time, because it's like every day, you have these children and you think, oh, this is going to be good. But it's forever and it's every day and there is no break. And so that was a lot of getting to know myself as a mom and not as just Annette. Now all of a sudden I've got the mom title.
It's a big transition.
Huge transition. I felt so not ready for it.
And I think there's this pressure to sort of like immediately be like, of course, it's life-changing and beautiful and happy. And I think we talk about it more now, obviously, but it's a huge change in your life. Now you're responsible for this other person's whole life, 24 hours a day, even if you work or stay home. And that can be a lot. And so counting down to nap time is like, okay,
It's very okay.
It's okay.
Because now my eyes are so wide open to it. And it, where did I go? Oh, Isaac, who's going to Eau Claire, my 18-year-old, they said, we're going to split the room. I want you to meander around to different tables to get to know people. But if you're a mom who has had more than 1 child or 2 children in college, please come out and get a pin that says experienced mom. I'm laughing at that, like, experienced? I have had children in college, but I wouldn't say I'm experienced ever, because experienced is like a huge word. And I purposely put my pin upside down because I was like, this is me, because that might draw attention to me, which it did. They're like, your pin is upside down. And I said, that's how I feel sometimes as a mom, upside down a lot. But then as people are going around, does anybody want to talk? And I thought, I'll take the opportunity to talk because I want everybody to know, especially there. People are so nervous about, is my child going to be okay away from me?
Am I going to be okay with my child
Am I going to
away
be
from
okay?
me? Yeah.
And financially, it's such a huge, big step for some families. And so I just touched on a few of the things that helped me, and I could see some head nods because it was just like a little tidbit. If you can take something away, that I'm going to say, great, because I wanted that from other people. Like, we can all learn from everybody else. Let's not pretend that we're just the ones teaching. I soak it up every day. And you and I said, I'm always wanting to learn.
Or just be open to the fact that, like, there's so much we don't know. I like to be right, you know what I mean? But I also like to be open to understanding things from somebody else's perspective, or, to add on to what I might know, or, always seeking that information. And And if you're closed, then it's really hard to grow anyway.
Oh.
And what else are you here for?
Yeah.
So
I can think back to when Hattie, my oldest, who's now 26, she was going into preschool, and it was maybe 3 days a week, 2 hours. And Charlie, who was 15 months behind, I had him by the hand, and we had to walk down into the basement for preschool.
Oh, yes.
And they had a Thomas the Tank Engine table there, and he was obsessed with Thomas the train. And I dropped her off, you know, and all the other moms just seem like they're just bye, kisses and hugs, and then they're leaving. And I've got Charlie who's screaming because he doesn't want to leave the table. And like drool's coming out of his mouth, and I'm like, have a good day, Hattie. And I'm kind of pulling him, and then we're going up the steps, and I'm trying to make it look pretty, and I'm smiling. That smile is exhausting.
Yeah.
So now I feel like I can just see people, see through that smile, and say, it's really okay. You can look people and say, whew, we are having a day.
Yes. Or, hi, to the kid. Or, it's going to be okay. Like, yeah, we've been there. I think there's this tendency, especially early on in parenting, where it's like, actually before parenting, where you're like, why is their kid doing that?
Oh.
Okay, and then you have
the
a child.
Judgy, yes.
Then you have a child and you're like, no, I totally know. Like, I've been there, and how can I help you? You know. And when you have many children, it's like we're all in this together. You know what I'm saying? Like, what your kids are doing matters to my family. Like, we can't escape that.
No.
So I could ignore what you have going on, but it affects everything around you, and then everything around that, which will impact me at some point. So isn't it my responsibility then to uplift and support and offer? Maybe there's nothing I can do in that moment, but at least just this, hey, this solidarity, you know.
For
I've been
sure.
there, we are there. Yeah.
I think with so much of my smiling and busy, I was heightened a lot, that I started to recognize that in my kids. And I thought, I am teaching this behavior that you smile through all the hard, and you don't allow anybody to help you. Or, and I'm always telling my kids, ask questions.
Right.
If you need help, ask for help. And people can always say no. But I was the worst with that. I wasn't asking for any help ever.
Yeah, do as I say, not as I do.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, so now you have Hattie and Charlie.
Correct.
And then how many years or how far along?
So then Hattie was going into first grade. Charlie was in kindergarten. I was teaching kindergarten. And that was the year that my husband and I said, you know, I just feel like this feels like very cookie cutter for me now. Like, we've got a boy and a girl, and, you know, he's not drooling anymore. He's not screaming anymore. And I said, I really would like to have a larger family. And then he said, sure. I mean, I think so, you know. And little did I know, you know, I had said 5, but I laugh at
like
where we are now, 8. But that's what started Isaac, and then 2 years later, Eli, and then 3 years later, Nora came home from Korea. 2 years later, Claire came home from China. A year and a half later, Louis came home from China.
Yes.
You know, it's like we just kept building.
Yeah. Well, you wanted that.
Loved it.
Yeah.
Yep. And sometimes not being naive, but just you're in this mode of this is working. Working being like
relative, probably.
Yeah. It wasn't always never pretty, and I mean, but it just felt like, oh, this is the path for our family. And then Evie came along, and it was like, whoa, she is just wild child. She is demanding, but it felt so right. So 8 is great.
Yeah.
Hard.
For that show, 8 is enough.
Yes, yes.
So yeah, it's hard. But then, you know, kind of like in your own family as a child, you know, the older kids get older. And this is the other thing too, when you're in those moments, like when they're babies and they're 15 months apart and you're just like trying to get through the day, counting down to nap time, it feels heavy and hard, and are you doing all the right things, and what will people think, and all of that. Yeah.
Oh,
but it's temporary.
It is temporary. But at the time, when you are counting down to nap time, or you're like, oh, bath time's coming up. Yeah. And then that means stories and bedtime. Yeah. You know, it's like, oh my gosh. Yay. Yeah. Yeah. And then, but I found myself, my husband even said it, waking up in the morning, I became just so routined that he said to me one time, are you going to wear those fishy shorts again?
Oh, we had a moment like that.
Yeah. So it was like my stretchy fishy shorts, I called them.
Your coping shorts.
Oh my gosh. Elastic doesn't talk back.
No, it's great.
And so I just remember going through that phase of like, I'm a mom.
Yes. I'm
going to be comfortable because I'm living for my children. We didn't have the resources now, you know. It was a flip phone, and it was just pushing buttons to call people, but there was not all this information.
Right.
And now, since COVID, I feel like people are more into helping and mental health, certainly.
For sure.
And I'm grateful for that, for this new generation of moms, because there's so much information at their fingertips.
Right. And a sense of community, weirdly, you know, through even social media and stuff like that. But I feel like there are in-person groups too, and there's maybe less, not that it's gone, but less silent suffering, you know, or thinking like, I'm the only one that feels this way after I had a baby, like this is hard. There are women who don't want to be around their baby, you know, with postpartum, and
oh, and I had that too. And
yeah,
I
so
did not know what in the world that was. And I said to my mom, one of 8, you know, sure, she had 8, so certainly she's going to tell me about that. And she was so quiet and reserved. And I wanted more information about her mothering because I looked up to her so much, but she was so private about that. And she'd say, oh, everybody cries. Like, it's okay. And I was like, oh, I need more than that, because why do I feel so weepy, so weepy? But once I found out what it was, you know, I didn't feel alone. But when you were talking about like mom groups and things, I remember taking my kids to the library. And even there, I was searching for other moms.
Yes, is someone else here?
But, you know, you'd have, and it was great, but you'd have the moms that were, just seemed like the perfect sippy cups, the perfect backpack. And then I have Charlie again, who is literally vomiting formula onto the rug. And I'm like,
just rub it in.
Rub it into the carpet.
Yeah. I feel like, too, everyone looks at the other moms and thinks that they don't see the flaw in the backpack. That mom also
there's a lot in that backpack that is hidden.
Yeah, for sure.
And I want to unpack that for people.
Yeah.
Because I just, I'm doing this platform to say we are real.
Yeah,
we make mistakes, but we can learn so much. A mom has so much value. And fathers do as well. But mom to mom, it's different. Moms think differently than dads.
Yeah.
My husband's version of cleaning, I kid you not, I was gone out of the weekend, of a weekend. And my best friends, I was with them, and they knew what had happened because I came in after a weekend of being gone, and I was like, everything feels so, I couldn't explain it, like there's a film of stuff on. So Hattie, who can't keep a secret, she's like, Mom, Dad brought in the leaf blower to...
Oh my God.
It was all wood floors, so he thought if he just started blowing everything, it would like get to the mudroom, and then he could just sweep it out. No, it just went poof everywhere.
I have not heard that before, but 2 things. One, yes, dads are important, and it doesn't have to be either or. We just happen to focus on moms here, except for this story real quick that you just told. Logically, we can walk through that with him. You know what I mean? Feels like we use the leaf blower to blow many things out of the way. There are things that need to be blown out of the way. that was a good try.
Symbolic.
Yeah. And then we don't do that again. So you learn. But yeah, so it is very different, and moms are important. And I think too, just a lot of times, you know, I'm talking about parenting is like the ultimate. If you're a parent and you have had kids, that's like your ultimate experience, one way or another. Sometimes it's super difficult the entire time. Sometimes it's just difficult on the front end, and then maintains difficulty, you know, through, but you figure it out. But you also can be yourself. And this is what you touched on about your fishy shorts. It's like there's a fishy short path, and then there is like, I'm going to change.
Just keep swimming with my little fin.
Yes.
Yep.
And it's okay to do that. You do need to do that. You know, your
Yeah.
kids are the most important thing when they come out. They just got here. They can't reason. They need you.
Yeah.
And then it is partly the discovery of allowing them to learn their environment and pull away from you a little bit. Not too much as toddlers, obviously, but being able to change out of those outfits, you know, and get back to center, because you're still that person. Yes, you're changed for life, obviously, but you still have this individualness about you that is dying to be part of your existence. And I feel like now we're at a point where there are a lot of resources to be able to figure that out. But it really is difficult to remember that and take steps toward that when you're just taxed and your kids, you know, need things, and it's hard to differentiate between what they need and what they can figure out.
And you get into a new chapter with their age and with their development, and you don't know, like, there's no moment where it says, this is the week that's going to happen.
Right.
And then all of a sudden when it happens, you do forget certain parts of that hard.
Yes.
You know, and then all of a sudden you're in a new phase. But I kept going back to the baby phase with so many of my kids.
Yes.
And as the olders are getting older, I wonder to myself sometimes, like, did I baby the older one too much?
Right.
Because I was living
Because you're in a
this
mode. Yeah.
Or did I rely on her so much that it's like, you're a big girl now, I need your help with the little ones. And I think I did a little bit of that with my oldest. And then when she went off to college, I was like, oh, wow, she is gone.
Come back.
Come back a little bit more. So we had to learn a lot about our relationship as a mother-daughter, because with her being the oldest, she was so responsible.
Sure.
And
like
she
third
wanted
parent.
to please me. And I wanted to please my mom all the time. I wanted to please my parents.
Sure.
And so there's that aspect too of people pleasing and finding this good balance with your kids as they're entering adulthood and saying, yes, I'm their mom, but they have to completely live their life the way that they want to now.
Yeah.
And that's pretty neat to see that age come. I mean, my son, who's 18 and leaving, he came down the other day with the big load. He wears so many clothes in a day. Came down with this huge laundry basket, and I said, what on earth are you doing? I do make my kids do a lot for themselves, but the laundry, my mother-in-law loves to do laundry, and she comes over. But he was coming down nonetheless with this, and he said, Mom, I saw the laundry room at my dorm. I gotta do this. And I said, have at it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Good
so
for him.
They're all learning.
Yeah. Also, side note, it's nice that your mother-in-law likes to do laundry to help you.
Oh, she loves it.
Yeah.
And I always felt guilty, like, please, you don't need to do that. You don't. She said, Annette, I love it. And if I can help you, it makes me so happy.
That's
so
so
now
nice.
I put a jigsaw puzzle out at the table or down by in front of the couch. And so when she's like, she has a very specific way to fold.
Sure.
And my kids, literally my kids are like, is Nana coming this week? Because they like how the clothes are folded. So side note, my mom, she did not act like that perfect mom. She was very humble, but she would let clothes sit in the dryer forever and they'd get wrinkled. And her version of ironing, she had a chair very similar to this. She would take her shirts and she would put them under her Queen Anne chair, just like this, and she'd sit on it, and she'd work on a puzzle, and she'd be like, I'm pressing my shirts.
Innovative.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, that is a nice way. And just to point out, you know, when you marry someone, you marry their whole family. And I think we talked about being open and, you know, personalities are what they are, but you have a responsibility to be the best you can with the people that come into your life. It doesn't always work out, but if you can find a way for somebody to be part and that's what they want to offer and that helps you and can strengthen a relationship, they can be present with your kids. I mean,
it works.
It's really nice. So.
And help is such a big thing that we as moms need.
Yes, all the time.
And don't be so shy or so nervous to say, okay, if a friend calls and says, hey, can I take your kids with, don't feel obligated like you have to go. They're offering.
Yeah.
And people offer if they really want to do that.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a lesson to learn to take them up on that. If you're a person that has a hard time accepting help, definitely.
So important.
Yeah.
That's when you can recharge your battery just for a little bit.
Yeah.
To just say, okay, they're going to be gone for a little while. I'm not going to run around. I'm not going to do the dishes, and I'm not going to do the laundry. And what can fill me for just a couple of minutes right now? Yeah.
You have to find those moments, especially when you're like so caught up. Okay, so so now you have 8 kids.
Yeah.
We accelerated through that.
We did.
But it's a time limit on the show. So.
Yeah.
So we've got 8 kids, and should we go back to like COVID times?
Sure.
Okay. Can I ask this?
But I probably need to
do some
the dynamics about my family.
Yeah.
Because so
it's hard to start
it is.
Yeah.
And so of all of my 8 kids, you know, as my kids get older, it's like we are just a family.
Yes.
We are all, in my mind, we are all blood, and we are. However, the viewers need to know that 4 of my children are adopted. And I say that only because, you know, there is a unique factor to our family. Outside of being adopted, 3 of which of my kids have congenital heart defects, and 3 of which are very severe. It's called a single ventricle, if anybody, I'm comfortable with sharing that. And I'm a resource if people need to because I feel like I am an open book. And I went into this I'm not a doctor, I'm not a physician, but again, we found resources and I grab onto resources when I can find it. So yes, I have 8 children total. My oldest is 26, 25, 18, 16, 14, 2 11-year-olds, and Evie is 8 in my mind. Evie would be 8. She passed away 4 years ago when she was 4. Yes. I'm still trying to get used to how I explain that to people because they'll say, how old is your oldest? And I used to say, well, she passed away at 4. Now I say she's 8. But in my mind, Evie is eternally 4.
Yes.
So I think that's really important for the viewers to know that we have this unique family and we have a tragedy involved in our story. And every day is different with our grief, my grief. But I think I've learned so much as being a mom and now going through a new chapter of grief. And it's not raising these babies anymore. It's raising my children through a big nightmare.
Yes.
And I've learned a lot. And how do I parent best in that situation? Because I didn't learn that from my mom. She didn't lose a child.
Right.
She ended up, when my mom passed away, her biggest worry was one of my brothers who struggled with alcoholism.
Okay. Yes.
And I watched her she worried and worried and worried. And then after she passed away, then it was months after that, my brother passed away. And in my mind, I was like, oh, I'm so grateful my mom never had to watch her child die, my brother. And then never did I realize that down the road, not much long after that, I would be burying my daughter.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's such a heavy subject, and we talk about motherhood all the time here, and that's the thing we don't talk about because we don't want to ever. I think sometimes we think if we think it, we're inviting that, and so we don't talk about that. But it's everyone's worst fear and nightmare. And
worst fear
to lose a child.
What's ironic is my worst fear when I was younger was my parents dying because they were older.
Yes.
And sometimes people would say, "Oh, are these your grandparents?" And I'd be like,
yeah, I know.
So that was my big fear, and I used to tell myself, like, play these scenarios in my head, like, I wonder who's going to die first, and how will I handle that? I was like, I didn't think I could handle it.
Right.
Even when Hattie and Charlie were first born, my parents would come visit, and I would call me when you get home.
Oh, you become the parent. That's the thing. You become the parent.
Yeah, and I found myself. But now I look back and I say there was this smoldering anxiety that I had as a young child,
right.
And different events that had happened in my childhood. I think it just it made me very more anxious. So then it was like I was oddly being prepared. I had the death of my father in my house, then the death of my mother in my house. Peacefully passed away, but
just
nonetheless.
Just to remind, they lived with you.
Yeah.
So
yes,
just to circle back to that, so
circling
people understand.
With like these weren't tragedies how they passed. My dad said, "I want to die butt to butt with your mother in bed," and he did.
Yeah.
And then 5 years later, my mom passed away in her bedroom, and then not long after that, my brother passed away from alcoholism. And so it was like these moments of grief and saying goodbye to people I love. And then the ultimate was losing my daughter. And not being prepared. Being prepared in a way that I knew that she had this heart condition that was so complex that it was always like a possibility.
Right.
But she kept overcoming every surgery.
Yes.
That all of a sudden I got this, I don't know, false hope, but she just surprised the doctors. And after her final surgery, they're like, okay, her heart is doing so well now.
Yes.
You can start looking down the road and maybe doing early childhood. And we started looking down the road, and then it wasn't from December, and then February she passed away.
And it wasn't even her heart.
It wasn't her heart.
After all of that.
Right. She did go into a cardiac arrest, but it was due to this tiny little tumor on her adrenaline gland. And it's called an adrenaline surge that she had. And that tumor, it wasn't that it was undiagnosed by the team.
Right.
It was after one of her surgeries, just in Evie fashion, she just, a tumor that children don't regularly have. Right. I mean, when they look at Evie's complex physiology, they would go back in the books, and the doctors would get together and they would search different countries to find a body that was similar to Evie.
Sure. Yeah. And
she was literally one
of a kind.
Yeah. And so they had to create their own path for her. But looking back, like, you learn so much from your children, and bravery is what I've learned from Evie, because her famous 3 words were, "I so brave." And bravery is, to me, bravery isn't putting a cape on and being very showy.
Right.
So that all the moms can see, like, hey, look at me, I'm juggling a really wonderful career, and I'm making my kids all these very nutritious foods, and I've got all the best friends in the world. Bravery is being in the trenches and getting up every single day and saying, I'm going to show up for my kids, and admitting fault to your kids. I remember saying I'm sorry to one of my kids for the first time. Well, this was a while ago.
Yeah.
And their face was like, oh, you made a mistake and you're saying sorry.
Yeah, it's like you're human like us. Yeah.
Yeah. And if that's anything I can give to my kids, my daughters, it's to be human.
Yeah. I once heard that, like, it's not about being less afraid. It's just about being more brave. So you can be the same afraid of something.
Yeah.
But, if you dig deep enough to take a step toward that, overcoming that, it's just about that. It's not about being less afraid, because people will say, like, don't be scared, And it's like, no, I'm scared of that. But it's about, having some trust in yourself, or pulling from somebody else's experience, and, just getting enough gumption to, like, take that step.
To do it.
So, and just so we can level set here, you and I have discussed this journey.
Yeah.
And so there's some familiarity here. So I don't want it to feel like I'm not
This
emoting in a reaction to that.
No,
but
because you came to my place. Because just when you and I got to talk, I felt like I have to get to know you, because I want to learn something from every experience. And I wanted this to be so authentic for you and I.
Yeah.
And I knew I needed to talk to you more.
Yeah. So here we are.
Yeah.
So I feel like we should honor Evie a little bit by telling some of her story, because it will always be a tragedy. It is so, like, hard to just think about that story, and, like, knowing you and knowing, what parents go through in the loss of a child is, like, so heartbreaking. It just is.
Well, and I see your eyes getting like
I
pink.
know.
And she came to us, I remember, after maybe her second surgery. And it's so, I live in the moment now. And I did while she was having these surgeries. I live in each moment. And some of them are so lonely moments and sad. And one of them is right after surgery. She was intubated, so she's got all these tubes on, lots of monitors, and it's very scary to look at. And there she is laying there, very helpless. But I did not look at her that way, because there's tiny little windows in the ICU. And the sun was coming right in, and it was landing right on her chest. And as the doctors are looking up and I can see them chatting with each other, I'm kind of smiling there going, oh, yeah, she's got this. The sun is coming in on her, and it's lighting her up in a way that I could look past all of that stuff. And I thought to myself, she's being used right now. She's being used for something huge. And we just said we're along for the ride with Evie. Some of the scariest things I've done have been because of Evie. After she passed away, I said, I'd like to do her eulogy. And my husband was like, I just don't know if that's a good idea. And I said, I have to share her with the world. Yeah, I have to. And people would read my things that I would write on my blog, and it was like this little tidal wave that was brewing with Evie. And people were starting to get to know her, and I thought, what an honor it is that I get to share her. She's writing her own story. I'm just the pen to the paper right now. And so when I spoke at her funeral, my husband stood next to me, and he said, if you can't make it through it, I will talk. But he's so private. Right. And it just felt so right at that moment. Evie was very malnourished when she came home from China. In fact, when my husband got off the airplane in Dane County at the airport, he came home with my brother, my mother-in-law, and my son. And it's so, like, deviating how guys are, because I was like, I have the perfect outfit for you to bring her home with. And they had been on the plane for 18 hours, and she had peed through everything. And so she's got these, and nothing fit her. So she wore, like, 4-month clothes, and she was
Yeah,
18 months.
So little.
So everything, and when I got at the top of the escalator, and when he went to hand me her, I was kind of scared. I was like, this doesn't match the pictures very much. And she had these little balding spots on her back of her head from laying in the crib. Even there, you know, I think people did not think that she would survive this child that was so malnourished, and she came home, and it's that immediate love, and the doctors found a pathway for her, but they weren't like, she's going to survive forever. They said, we don't know if there's a surgery available, but we're going to make one.
Right.
And then they did that. And then it was like, oh my gosh, she survived that.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden she started eating, and then she stopped eating, and then she had to have a tube in her nose, and then she had to have a tube put in her stomach. And then all of a sudden I entered this world of multi-different needing help from NG, from health, like all these different people in the hospital. So she was creating this really big team.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, this big team of onlookers were watching our family. And it was beautiful, but then sometimes I have to say there are naysayers in the world, and I don't like to touch on the bad at all. But for people listening who maybe feel like, I feel like some people are against me. I don't think that they're against you. I think they're curious about you. And maybe you're doing something that they don't think that they could do or should do. So you get critics in life.
Sure.
And I think it's okay to have critics, because they're just questioning, is that something I could do? Not everybody can do this. Just like there's a lot of occupations I couldn't do, you know? So it's okay.
Yeah.
But we definitely came across, you know, those kinds of people. But it only made me realize, no, we're really on our same path. And as Evie got a little bit older, she started to walk. And I mean, she's my 8th child, and they say your 8th is a lot more spoiled than your 1st.
Sure.
But I mean, she'd stand on the kitchen counter and she would dance, and I'm embarrassed of my voice, so I wouldn't like to sing. And then all of a sudden I'm singing, and my kids are like, you never did that, Mom. And I just thought, yeah, that's her being brave and me following along.
Yeah.
And so Evie's 3 words were, I so brave. And that is what is on my tattoo.
I love that.
I so brave. Wildflowers, because she's a wild child. Her actual heartbeat. This Chinese symbol of strength. And then we have this sunset here, because we named it Sunset Acres. But somebody just told me a while ago, those look like her eyelashes. And I thought, oh, is that beautiful?
Cute. Yeah.
And then a butterfly as she spreads her wings. So
that's lovely.
Thank you. Yeah.
And not to forget that you were also parenting 7 other kids while you were doing that. And, you know, just to recognize them for being who they were through all of that, because that's a lot of weight, you know, to carry as a sibling. And then also to observe your mom. You know, it's like you were parenting them, but they also, and kids are this way, observant, and they want you to be okay. And so that is a weight for them to carry as well.
It is. So. And it took me a while because my mom was pretty stoic. She was a private crier, and when she would cry, if my brothers would just drive her crazy enough, and all of a sudden, you made Mom cry. Yeah. My dad would be like, you made Mama cry. But I just felt like I kind of learned that, like private crying, you know, and my kids, I think it was my son Eli, he just said, Mom, it's okay to cry. Like, it makes me feel better, because I feel like crying. And that has been another source of strength, because Evie gifted me moments with my kids that are so real now.
And deep.
And so deep that I was sitting outside with my 25-year-old yesterday, and he's getting eaten up by the lightning bugs. And he's like, Mom, can we go? And I said, no, I want this moment with you because we're just being so real with each other.
Yeah.
And so they taught me to let them be sad and don't fix it, Mom.
Yeah.
Because I would always want to find a remedy for a headache, a stomach ache. You
For sure.
skin your knee, I'll get the right Band-Aid.
Same. Yes.
Yeah. And there's no remedy for grief except time. I will say therapy, because it really worked for our family. And open communication.
Yeah, and being allowed to feel that, you know. We do rush to remedy, I think.
Yeah.
I'm for sure a person who does that. And I've had to learn, you know, allowing someone to tell something that, like, it's literally told me this as a lesson. Not even like I just learned by observing. No, it was like a pointed, like, I feel like this. Maybe it's not going to change anything, but they just wanted to feel like that in the moment. They just want to tell the story of what happened. They're not necessarily looking for a fix.
Right.
I'm always looking for a fix as a person.
As
So,
they're telling me, in my mind,
What are
I'm
the
going, what
options?
can I do? What can I do?
Yeah.
And now my oldest will say, Mom, I don't need you to fix this.
Yes. Same.
I just need you to listen because I know what I'm going to do, but I need you to just listen. And it takes so much pressure off.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is so freeing.
It is really
I don't have to
liberating.
fix everything. In fact, now I can go the other direction and I'll say, is there something you want me to do about it? Or are you just telling me? Yeah, there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
And after Evie passed away, my therapist told me, you can't speed up their grief and you can't make them happy, Annette. Just by you being you, that doesn't make them happy. They got to walk through this themselves.
Right.
And so I continually learn about the right path to take. And of course I went through a bout where I was like, oh my gosh, did I destroy my kids? Did Dan and I destroy our kids because a child died? I had no control over that.
No.
She was here for a purpose, and that is why I'm here to talk to all moms, talk to all sorts of people, to say that your life has meaning. Whatever you do in life as a mom, even when you're wearing those fishy shorts, your life has a ton of meaning right there.
All the time for your kids. Yeah. Well, she was a force because, I mean, I never met her, and even just coming out, and we should talk, you know, a little bit about what you're doing now and what has come from that. Yeah, I mean, this is you know, just something that I carry now. So, yeah, you should talk about just where you
farm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's so great.
it's so interesting because we moved kind of during COVID. My mom was no longer with us, and we were staying very planted there because we were close to the hospital in Wanakee, close to my in-laws, a mile away. My mother had passed away, and we all went on a family vacation. It was just Dan and my kids and my niece, and we went on a family vacation, and we were in South Dakota during COVID, but nonetheless, we were all together in on this property, and my husband said, would you move if we could find something like this? And I said, well, I mean, maybe. Now, you don't have to move to a farm to be happy. That's not what I'm suggesting. But it was a change. It was getting out of my comfort zone because I was very, you know, planted in this community. My in-laws, they're planted, you know, love them. But it was like, okay, you know what? It is time for a change. And where he goes, I go, vice versa, and the kids follow. And so we found a piece of property outside of Lake Mills, and my realtor laughed because I said I wanted 2 goats. I mean, why not, right? Just change it up a little bit.
Why not?
And so we got there, in November. Evie had her surgery in December. I mean, it was a big, crazy time doing homeschool, COVID school. And then she passed away in February. So she didn't have much time at that house.
Oh, right.
And then, you know, I'm trying to find meaning after she passes away. And I'm like, now I don't have a community there. I like, why are we here now? And it was for a purpose.
Oh, it's so symbolic. Yeah.
Because it was, I needed to withdraw from so much of where I was and really take in my family and everything around me and have some private time. And we used that private time to our advantage because the country was really good. Well, then fast forward, wanted those 2 goats. And then all of a sudden 3 came the following week or so. And like children, you know, we decided to keep going. And then
the goat community knew.
The goat community knew. So we had, so all of a sudden now we have 16 goats and we have cows.
Yeah.
And the cows, they're not milking cows. They're not anything but pets. We have 3 donkeys. We have chickens. We have kitties. And so that is starting and that's becoming very rewarding. But then at the same time, you know, you're out there in the winter and your water buckets are freezing and you're like, okay, I'm not good at this. No, I can be good at it. I just need to keep going.
You don't have experience at it. Yeah.
Keep going, just like a mom. You say I'm not good, but you keep going and experience and you learn. And someone said there's a huge learning curve, just like with parenting.
Yeah.
And so we just continued down this path. And then all of a sudden, last year, the year before, I really got up above the barn. I just turned this open area into my writing studio where I would write. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I'm a huge thrifter. And I love to be creative. And I really wanted my own space.
Yeah.
Because my husband has this barn downstairs. My kids have all of these. So I created my own little nook. And it's all of the pieces that bring me joy of when I was a child.
Oh, that's great.
I saved a lot. My dad was a painter. I saved stuff. And then all of a sudden this creativity started to just billow inside of me. And then I thought, how can I help other people? Not being a people pleaser, but learning from my experience. I felt like there's so much to be learned out in this farm right now, and the woods are so beautiful. And I would go out there during my grief, and I remember when I would get frustrated, there were many times that I would go out there and I just feel so like this is never going to end. And I remember doing things out in the woods, like throwing an axe at the tree or whatever. And all of that stuff brought me to where we are now. And I thought, I'm going to use this space. And my husband was completely game for it. Use this space to help other people. And if it can bring them joy during their sorrow or during their times of when I don't feel like I'm a very good mom, let's have a space where you can maybe come and do a very creative class. Or your kids can get away for a little while and you can go have some coffee or go for a run or just read a newspaper. So the kids can come and do some classes. I want to do therapy, one-on-one therapy for people who've like, I don't like the whole group thing. You know, I'd like to be able to walk them through the woods, have some time. Let's look at the trees. Let's look at the birds. Let's listen to this. And I have so many sprinkles of Evie throughout the woods that, you know, there may be a sign that says you are enough, or there's butterflies hanging, or wind chimes everywhere. It's eclectic, it's unique, it's me. And so when I find myself out in the garden, I find myself with Evie, and she's everywhere through the yard.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
And I will say, my experience there was so great. First of all, it was a beautiful day, you know, and just pulling up was great, and greeted by your dog. And, okay, so the goats, first of all, when you're like, I'm just going to let them out, I'm like, I mean, are they going to run away? I don't have a lot of animal experience. And they just came out and they're just like ready for a walk. And then the chickens, you let the chickens out. they too were like, we just go on
Here
a
we
walk.
are.
Yes. And the whole scene is so beautiful. In the woods, so I was describing it to my kids because I had those little videos I took. But we didn't take video in the woods. But I'm not a fan really of, I have a friend who will go running and she goes running on paths in the woods that are designed for that. I'm not trying to do that. I just have a thing. It's like, I don't want to be alone in the woods.
Yes.
Okay. I feel like I'm not alone in that
I don't
thought.
blame you.
Okay. But, and my kids know that because we live somewhere where there's some woods that people walk in, but I just cannot, I'm not going in there by myself. Okay. So I was describing that I was going for a walk in the woods with these goats and this person I didn't know. And, and so when I came home, I was just describing, I'm like, no, it wasn't like woods. It was like a happy forest. It was like, because you come through and then there's suddenly this beautiful mirror on a tree.
Yeah.
Or like the signs you said, okay, and also the goats are just like, hey, they're sort of escorting. They don't have a lot of awareness for personal space.
No.
Which, okay, because I feel like they were trying to get the back of my knees sometimes and knock me down. But they're very friendly and they know what they're doing and they don't run away. And it was sort of otherworldly to be back in there and just having a conversation. And it's beautiful back there. And I think, just your whole scene is a sense of calm and, of course, that grief doesn't ever really go away. It just shape shifts,
You got it.
You're still going to feel it. It's not like you forget that person ever.
No.
They still hold that place in your heart, but I think sort of embracing that and making it something beautiful that you can interact with daily is so healing. And your aim to have people come out there and just relax, where we don't ever do that. You can try to relax in your house, but it's impossible.
I know.
You can still hear, the traffic and neighbors sometimes or whatever, but that was a beautiful experience.
I'm so glad.
Thank you for letting me come there. And what a wonderful tribute, to Evie, and then to provide that for your kids to, stay tethered to something that is beautiful and healing like that.
Thank you. And my husband laughs because he said, Annette, if you could, you would take every piece of furniture outside and live outside.
For sure. Yes.
I'm always, he's like, where are you now?
Yeah.
I laugh at him about the leaf blower in the house. Well, here I am. He's like, you are mowing the woods. You are mowing. And I said, yes. And I like that idea, though. I never thought about it. Instead of woods, it is like a forest.
Yeah, it's
because
very
the trees are so tall, and you can see where you're going. And so, being outside, it is my escape from heaviness because it feels like I'm closer to Evie when I'm outside. And certainly, I just look for signs. And so, we're going to be doing a grief retreat in September with 3 other women that have suffered a loss in their own way, but bringing people together. I want to do a mother-daughter retreat.
Let's do it.
I keep thinking about it, and I feel more and more like this is what I want to do. Nothing against our young children. No. But I think let's celebrate that we made it through the trenches with our daughter that's a little bit older, because they've learned something from you, so let's celebrate the things that they've learned from you. I have a beautiful mold of my mom's hand. So my mom died when she was 90, and she had Parkinson's. And her hands, she'd always say, oh, Annette, they're so ugly and bony. I want to remember the ugly and bony. And so I put her hand in this cast, and she said, not my left hand, because that was her shaky hand. And I said, no, Mom, I need to use the hand that shook. That was her dominant hand. That's the hand she wrote with. And so I put it in there, and it has to sit for a little while, and the whole thing is like shaking. And I said, Mom, you're too nervous. The more you calm down, it will. And then we pulled it out, and then I had to fill it with something. Well, then you'd wait a day, and then you'd peel it away. And my mom she broke her pinky finger before she passed, and she was like, I don't need to get it reset. And so the pinky finger is like hanging out.
Perfect.
Yep. It's so perfect. And even the mold was kind of like imperfect, because when I was peeling it off, I'm like, oh, shucks, her fingernail came off. And okay, whatever, that's real thing. So that mold is sitting in a cabinet on the main floor. And it is to remind me of the stages of life, of like, here she is 90, and that hand has more knowledge in it. And that is what I hope someday that my hand will. And so my hope is, for, as I was thinking of this, I was exercising that in the morning, and I'm like, maybe we could make molds for the mom and the daughter. That is a keepsake that they will never know how important it is until that person is gone. So I don't know. I think that's my mind is always working, as yours is too. And I just, just being here, moments of strength, moms.
Yeah.
Let's celebrate that.
So much. And the other thing about what you have out there, and to share that with everybody is, that's wonderful to be able to do that and have that aim. And then just thinking back to like when you were teaching and making up stories for the kids, it's like you manifested that because you are living in the story you created.
Oh, that's
like you're
so
living in
beautiful.
the forest. I mean, when I walked through there, I don't mean to harp on this, and like maybe it's making the show a little long, but like you've put things out there that are from your creative imagination. It's like you brought all of that to life, and it's
now if I could
great.
only have the beanstalk,
well,
and then make that go up,
Dan,
right?
Just kidding. It's
but
coming.
You are right. I can look at something, and Dan would be like, I have no idea what you're going to do with that. I am going to create something out of that. So there's these crazy old doors that go to the garden, it is like this. I loved watching Little House when I grew up, and I loved the lady that had the crow on her shoulder, and she had make-believe people, and then they were going off to church or whatever, and then all of a sudden they're like, what is her problem? Like she literally was rocking in a chair and she had stuff. And that is me. My son, Charlie, who's a storm chaser, chases tornadoes. He told me I'm like Aunt May on a Twister. Like she's got all these wind chimes. And he's like, Mom, it's kind of crazy. You come outside and there's just a lot of you out here. But I don't want to be like everybody else.
No, you're definitely not. And it's great. So
thank you.
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay, there's so much more. Okay, but we have to, I think, wrap it up.
Okay.
So
time flies.
If people want to connect with you, we are putting that at the bottom of the screen. But do you just want to talk just briefly about
for
what
sure
you have? Yes.
So I have what's called Mom's Apple Cart.
Yes.
Weebly.
Yeah.
That is my blog.
Okay.
The reason it's called Mom's Apple Cart is when we were going to adopt Claire and we found out she had this severe heart condition. Before we knew she had a heart condition, we went in there like, okay, we would like, to adopt, and I just don't want to upset the apple cart.
Okay, yes.
We upset the apple cart.
You just tossed it really far, actually.
So we, I say it's sweet and it's sour, all the kinds of apples mixed. So I write in there about my children, about lots of mom stuff where I mess up. And I hope people can identify with that. So I've been doing that for years, so you can just go down the different years that I've been writing and figure out what you want to read. Also, I have my store, business, whatever we want to call this. It's called Little Bird. And so that is also at the bottom of the page. But we call it Sunset Acres Online.
Okay.
Because the name of our farm is Sunset Acres. That's where I'm going to be listing classes and these one-on-one experiences people can do. And maybe our mother-daughter experience together. Yeah. And then I have my email address, because if people just feel like, I don't really know how I don't know what I'm asking you, just send me an email. I'm happy to help where I can.
And I would say, if you're feeling that way, and, especially the grief piece, but you have a lot of things that you could talk about. I mean, just in motherhood, but even things we didn't touch on. You're a marathoner. You started a nonprofit for families in Guatemala, right?
Body image is huge for me, because I was made fun of growing up about, like, I was called Bertha Butt.
Okay.
And that was very hurtful.
Kids are very mean.
7th grade. These boys would say that, and I'm deviating because this is important for moms who maybe are struggling with body image. And I smiled through those moments of being made fun of. And I was with my best friends. They don't even remember it because I just smiled my way through those hurtful feelings. Fast forward to many years later in my 20s, I was in my best friend's wedding, and her soon-to-be husband, that guy who called me Bertha Butt, was standing up in the wedding. And so she said, hey, Annette, you're gonna walk down the aisle with this guy. And I was like, oh my gosh. And she said, you know him? I said, do I know him? I said, he called me Bertha Butt. What?
He probably didn't even remember either.
The best is when we meet the night before at the rehearsal. We go to shake hands, and he said, hi, I'm so-and-so. And I said, hi, I'm Bertha Butt. And he's like, what? And I told him what had happened, and he could not apologize enough. So that is meaningful to say you carry things with you. Body image is huge. So, yeah.
And that led to a lot of things.
A lot of marathons,
And so there's just a lot. If anybody watching is curious or wants to reach out, I mean, it's very generous for you to offer your email,
course.
so they should reach out to you. Okay, any final thoughts before we go?
Oh, gosh. To those new moms.
Yes.
To those new moms, I applaud you. You're doing the hardest job in the world. And if you're sitting right now watching this in your fishy shorts.
Yeah. Hopefully you have a pair.
Hopefully you have that pair or those favorite yoga pants that you're wearing. And I don't wash my hair every day. So don't feel like you got to wash your hair and make everything perfect. Take time for you. Find one thing. If it's your favorite cup of coffee, celebrate a nap time. That doesn't make you a bad mom. Celebrate it and say, we made it through the day.
Yeah.
And if there's tantrums happening, take a step back. Because people will say, oh, the years go so fast. They don't feel like it when you're a new mom.
Not when you're in it like that.
No. But you're a survivor. You can do it. Read, look out for books. Just that phone is at the tip of your hands. So use that and search other people who struggle. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good advice.
Good.
Thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you so much. This was so good. So good.
Okay, so as we wrap up here, don't be afraid to take the perspective of somebody else like we have today with Annette and learned some new things and learned how important it is to lean on other people and be open to their perspectives as well. Maintain yours when things get hard and continue to be resilient and show up for yourself and your kids, your family, the world. We all need you. Have pursuits, try new things, be open to experience life as an adventure, and should be treated as such. And when you feel alone, realize that you're not, because there are a couple billion of us moms around the world, and we are here for you. Thank you.